Today, we'll today, right now, we're going to analyze the facial expressions and gestures of Jordan Peterson. Very famous and notable psychologist and professor from Canada. He doesn't have a very wide range of expressions, but he is a very learned man, a very ambitious, studied man, and his awareness serves to create his personality. And he implements the things that he learns very well. But in that process, he loses himself, and I believe that he's completely lost himself. And you'll see from every picture what I mean, and I'll break it down a little bit for you. And I don't mean this in any kind of derogatory way, just as when I spoke about John Jones recently. Now, he's a very well put together person, and this is part of the personality and the character that he builds to present. Because a lot of his public expression, and I believe his existential expression, is a performance. Now, I'm under the impression that this person is dead. The Walking Dead. Once again, I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you what I see. Now, he lives and expresses a lot of confidence, but he's not confident within. And you'll see that in every photo, there's this blank stare, staring off into space, holding it together. And in this particular, I'm not sure how recent this photo is, but I think pretty recent, last year or two. In this particular photo, he's wearing this red and blue outfit coat. I've never seen anything like this. And I wouldn't wear anything like this. I don't think this is particularly stylish. That tie is amazing. But he's trying to subliminally, subconsciously express something with this. And I'll leave that up to you. I have my own opinions about what it is, but I think it's insignificant, as far as what I think. But I want you to look at his facial expression and his eyes and see if you see what I see, because this is the expression that you're going to get with him. He may be somewhere in there, but you're going to rarely see the real Jordan Peterson. What you're going to see is what Jordan Peterson has studied and observed and then proceeded to assemble himself after those things. He looks like he doesn't sleep well and that he's been crying. And he may be, he's a scientist, so he may be trying to figure something out, And there is a bit more life in those eyes than these. But I believe he may be intoxicated, He may be intoxicated, inebriated in some way in this photo. He uses his hands a lot. And it's all part of the performance. He's a very dedicated person. Very intense. I don't think he's gritting his teeth, but I believe he may grit his teeth when he's alone, grind his teeth. I believe he may be a person that goes into trances and loses consciousness sometimes. I mean, like I said, I think he's, for the most part, brain dead. Not that he's unintelligent, because obviously he's not. But he's not sentient in that sense, I think. I think, going back to this photo, which is a pretty good one, straight on, looking straight on, he reminds me of an old lion. That may not have that same propensity for aggression. And I don't think he was ever an aggressive person, but I think he still has an intellectual aggression. But if you've ever seen like an old big cat, an old lion, an old jaguar or something, or even an old cat, they kind of look like this. So whereas John Jones is an active bear in its prime, this is an old lion. Great suit. Of course he's posing, but there's that fight to stay alive, to keep some semblance of life. He's very preoccupied in his mind. And I think he uses his studies of the outside world and speaking about what he sees and what he observes and what he studies and all of that type of thing about the outside world to distract him from whatever preoccupations he may have within his own inner world. This is something I share with him. I really never feel it this deeply, and I do think everyone, well, no, that's not true, but lots of people feel this at some point, but he lives in it. And that's what I mean when I say he's dead, because when you live in that, you're dead. Is this the same photo? Yeah. Now here, he appears to be happy. Once again, always well put together. But if you look a little closer, you see that blank stare. Can you see it? I believe the only time he really feels alive is when someone is admiring what he's presenting. And he's always presenting something. That's why he always puts himself so well together and appears to be so perfect and presents himself as so perfect. And no one's perfect. Now, I believe he thinks he looks serious. I'm not sure what he thinks he looks like. He seems as if he's, the presentation is supposed to be that he's very serious, but he's serious in a way that Frankenstein is serious. I mean, he kind of looks like Frankenstein. And that's what he's done to create this performance. And here we see again the blank stare, the no sleeping, the crying. Life is difficult, but for Jordan Peterson, I believe it's very difficult. Especially when it seems as if he spends a lot of time alone, maybe too much. But what's too much? I mean, I spend all my time alone, so I totally understand that. But I think he may be about 60 years old or something. And he's sick of living. He's keeping himself preoccupied until he's gone. He doesn't see himself as part of the social setting, and I don't either, so I get that. Now, he portrays himself as being very harmless because he wants to be involved in the study. It reminds me of the Stanford experiment where the scientist takes the role of the warden. You have to look that up. It's pretty interesting. A friend put me onto that recently. But in order to really observe someone as a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you have to remove yourself from judgment, from reactions, from emotions, and really be prepared to be objective. I believe that's the way to put it. Correct me if not. Goodness, that's a fly suit. I mean, this guy knows how to dress. He never really looks at anyone. It appears that he is because he's facing you and his eyes are set on you, but it's just a blank stare. And I don't think he's listening to people when they speak. I believe that he's so studied and learned and practiced and disciplined that he has a huge bank of things that people say and do. And the blank stare is because he's given into this kind of mechanical way of being where when you say something, he's going through all the possible responses, all the possible reasons you said it, and thinking about the right thing to say afterwards, like a computer, and then he says it. And he's very eloquent, and the things that he says pretty much always make sense. But there's something about it, his assessments of things, that doesn't lend itself to the possibility of, I wouldn't say the outlier because I'm talking about something much more common, the possibility of uniqueness. And Jordan Peterson is not unique. The uniqueness that can be found in Jordan Peterson is the amount that he's studied and how he's put together the information. There goes that blank stare. Another great suit. Speaking with his hands. Hair is immaculate. Blank stare. Exhaustion. Crying. Not sleeping. He has a problem that he wants to solve. The problem isn't his. He sees every problem. And this may be because he's chosen to be a psychologist, or maybe that he chose to be a psychologist because he sees every problem. It's the chicken or the egg thing. And I hate that phrase, but it's appropriate. Now here he seems intoxicated by admiration. I mean, there's a microphone in front of him. When people get in front of microphones, it's kind of like when they get in cars, start flicking everybody off. So he's drunk on power right now, because probably everybody in the room is enamored by him and his presentation. I imagine he listens to a lot of classical music. Classical music is the art music of the scientists. It's not really art, it's more science. And there's a ritual, and they wouldn't want to think of themselves as this, because scientists don't engage themselves with silly indigenous practices. But if you get up and clap after the first movement of a classical work that has 3 movements, people are going to look at you like you're crazy. And you might get kicked out, or at least frowned at by everybody in the room, including the group, the orchestra, or the chamber group, or whatever. So he is a feeling person, and I imagine this picture reminds me of someone like Leonard Bernstein, where the performance, and when you're talking about somebody like Leonard Bernstein, that is a performer. Whether he's playing the piano, or I think he played the piano, but I always saw him conducting. But I think I might have seen him play the piano at some point. Or Glenn Gould. That's another person this kind of reminds me of. Very intelligent people, but there's a limit to their intelligence, because they're spitting out things that they've learned and heard, and that's what gives them the confidence. And so even a person like that, their experience of joy is a performance. So this is how the learned man experiences the euphoria of classical music, He's tilting his head back in a cerebral motion to say, this is going straight to my brain, And I think he is listening to music at this point and enjoying it. This does not seem like a pose. But it could be a pose. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being fanciful. But this reminds me of the effect that classical music has on people that like classical music because they think they're supposed to. Speaking with his hands. He's listening here. He's very sober. And he's being attentive. Someone may be challenging him. He feels comfortable here wherever he's speaking, he doesn't feel like he has to prove himself. Maybe he's speaking to, you know, someone that's not necessarily threatening. A lot of times people try to get him caught up because he's so studied. They want to disprove what he says. And I think this is not one of those situations. Even his hair is a little more disheveled. And that may be just because it was raining outside. But I think it's telling. And he's been very, very vulnerable about his life. So, and that's very brave, I think. A lot of these pictures remind me of my father. My father was like this. Even though he wasn't quite so morose. Blank stare. And I think he believes that he looks intense and determined, but really, it's a blank stare. And there's something on his mind. People look like this when there's something on their mind. Despondent, almost. Blank stare. Sadness. Reminiscing. Okay, this is my favorite photo of him. He always looks good, but here he's alert. He looks like he's completely in the room. He's not preoccupied with any inner thoughts. Now, he does look a little annoyed, but he looks like like when you play chess, he looks like he's about to see it. He sees a checkmate. And he's, insulted that you think that you could even beat him at this game. But this is, at the beginning I said he was an old lion. Here we get a glimpse of the young lion. Those eyes are very alive. In this moment, the life has come back into him. He's breathed it all back in, and he's expressing it. No blank stare here. Even the posture is, and his posture is always good. And that may be why he studies so much, is because that's where he gets his confidence. In the same way that John Jones gets his confidence from his training, he gets his confidence from his studying. Now, you don't see a lot of different expressions with him. Because like I said, I do still believe that he's kind of like a zombie. Or a golem or something like that. Information golem. And this looks as if it's a photo shoot. And so he's trying to just let them take a picture of him. So he's not really thinking about anything. Just trying to let them, make like anyone else, make sure the photo may turn out the way they both want it to. I like this photo too. I like his clothing. It's so fly. Now, I do think that this person is a loving person. I can see feeling, but I believe he is more concerned with what other people think about him than he is with maintaining his own emotion, the balance of his emotions. And it appears that's the last photo, and I think that's a good one to end on. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people like this person. I don't think a lot of people would go to the places that this person goes mentally. You know, he's like a daredevil. He's like an intellectual daredevil, which is why he's interesting. I think people live vicariously through him, and they count on him to explain things because he's gone to such lengths to get certain information, as far as sacrificing his spirit and his sanity to try and fix some problems that, even though he has the answer, won't be fixed. And I'm not sure if he doesn't know or whether he's just disregarded the idea because he's no lion, that people are not going to listen to what he's saying. Rather, they're going to enjoy the performance. So this is the great psychologist. You know, some people think he's a philosopher. I don't think he's a philosopher. I think he's an academic. And I think there's a great separation between those two things. And maybe we'll get into that one day. But this is the great psychologist, great thinker, Jordan Peterson.